Welcome to the Live Unrestricted podcast, a show where you'll learn how to heal your relationship with food and your body so that you can focus your time and energy on more important things like your personal growth. I'm your host, Sabrina Magna, food freedom coach, and my mission is to help make your life happier and healthier without stress, overwhelm, or guilt about food. If you love the show, please do go out and share it. And if you're looking for support with your relationship with food, details about my programs are in the show notes. Thanks for spending time with me today. Now let's jump in. Hello, it's your friend Sabrina, and what you're about to hear today is a brand new segment that we're going to have on the Live Unrestricted podcast called Coaching Over Coffee, where I will introduce you, my listener, to real people just like you, people from my community, other listeners on their journey to healing their relationship with food and learning how to eat intuitively, learning how to improve their health without dieting. So on these episodes, I'm going to coach people just like you at all stages of their journey. So whether they're just learning about intuitive eating or working on it for a while now, I'm going to bring you behind the scenes of what it's like for my own clients to be coached by me inside the Food Freedom Academy, because this is something I absolutely love to do, is to coach my clients through their own blind spots, to help them see things from a different perspective, to uncover what's blocking them. I am so excited to start this segment. I put out the invitation to people on my email list. So if after listening to this coaching session, you want to have the opportunity to be coached by me personally, then you can head to the link in my show notes, sabrinamagna.com/coaching over coffee, all in one word, and you can apply to be considered for a free coaching session. Now, today, what you're going to hear is one of my community members, Sarah. When Sarah applied for this coaching session, she mentioned that she struggles with binge eating and overeating, emotional eating, constantly thinking about food, shame and guilt around eating, and feeling out of control around food. So if that is you, then this episode is going to be extremely powerful, because we are going to talk about emotional eating, about the real reasons why people have such a hard time breaking free from the habit of emotional eating. We're going to talk about, and we uncover the deepest core issues that has been driving her lifelong struggle with food. She has been dieting since she's 13 years old. You're going to hear this story in this interview, so I won't give it too much away. But if you want to learn how to break free from a lifelong struggle with food and with dieting, then this episode is for you. So let's get into this first session of Coaching Over Coffee.
Well, like I was telling you, I have a very busy schedule. So I work overnight at the hospital, and then I am in school, not every day, obviously. It's not full-time school. And then I also, I have a family. I take care of my family. And then we're planning a wedding. My daughter's getting married in June.
Amazing. Congrats.
Thank you. So we have a lot going on. And what I find is that when I'm tired or rushing from one thing to the other, I just reach and grab, and whatever food is the most convenient and it's not the healthiest, obviously, but I find that I don't have a lot of time for meal prep, which I know I need to make time. It's just hard to make time when you're tired. Mm-hmm. And, and then I find overnight I feel hungry, but then whenever I eat, it's just like makes me not feel great. So I don't know what to eat overnight, but I feel like I need to eat something, because I don't eat before I go to work because I'm sleeping, but I don't know. I know I'm an emotional eater. I took your emotional eating quiz, and I know that that's a huge part of it. And I think when I'm very tired, that's probably when I overeat the most.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Thank you so much for sharing that. So I took a few notes, and I'm going to ask you some deeper questions to understand you a little bit better. Right. So when did this start for you? Do you have a history of overeating, of dieting, of struggling with food? When did this start for you?
So my family, we are a bigger built family. And so most of us have always been kind of made fun of for how we And so when I was 13, I started going to Weight Watchers with my mom. And that's very, I know that's common because it was on your podcast. It's just something that we do. And so ever since then, I've just been up and down and up and down. Um, Looking back, I should not have been that way because I was healthy as a kid. You're a kid. You're pretty healthy. But it has just, it's a vicious cycle for me. I mean, I'm 46 years old. So I have been struggling with this my whole life. To this day, in fact, in college, I had someone say something about my weight not too long ago that it got back to me. They didn't say it specifically to me, but and that's hard and that hurts, and it's something that I, you know, it just makes me want to eat more, unfortunately, which you'd think it would be the reverse, but for me it is not. It just makes me want to be like, well, I'm just giving up then.
Well, yeah, and that's something that we always talk about in the academy is that we think that shame and guilt is going to lead us to more positive behaviors, right? Like if I hate myself enough, if I'm mad at myself enough, then I will want to change. And the science shows that actually it's compassion and it's being gentle with yourself that leads to more positive behaviors. Because if you don't believe that you deserve to feel good, if you don't believe in your own self-worth, then why would you adopt positive behaviors that will promote you feeling good, right?
Right.
And I'm so sorry to hear that this has been part of your life for so long, that experience of starting at Weight Watchers at such a young age. It's so common. And starting at 13, 14 years old, of course, that's going to mess up your relationship with food and how you view yourself because you've been told as of 13, there's something wrong with your body and you need to fix it, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And so what are some of the diets? You mentioned Weight Watchers. What are some of the other things that you've tried over the years?
I have done Weight Watchers and Jenny Craig and MyFitnessPal. I did Dr. Oz's Total 10, and currently I'm just trying low carb because I've tried keto and there's just no way I can do keto. So I'm just trying to do low carb. Um, Trying.
Yeah, and this is giving me a lot of insight on why you might be struggling with overeating now. So you're trying low carb now. When you look at all those different things that you've tried, why do you think that, I'm assuming considering we're chatting now at 46 years old, they didn't work long term. So
No.
why do you think that none of those things worked for you?
Probably because I don't think my emotions are level. They're just, I haven't figured out how to deal with emotions. And so I always turn to food for comfort. It's
Mm.
what I would assume.
Yeah, absolutely. The emotional piece is huge, right? Because if we don't know emotional regulation, and this is something I see in a lot of my clients, is they're almost afraid to feel certain emotions. We're afraid to feel sad, stressed out, anxious, lonely. And so our initial reaction when that starts boiling up in our bodies is there's something wrong with feeling this emotion. And so I need to do something that's going to numb or distract me. And so your brain has picked up on that habit of, well, I know food will do that for me because I've done it before. And our brain, what it does is it like pieces two behaviors together. So if it notices that when you feel stressed and you turn to food, you feel better, even if it's only temporary, because I'm sure that you've experienced the guilt and the shame that's even worsened after emotional eating, that part kind of gets forgotten because it's like that short term satisfaction that feels good, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So none of those things that you've tried have really addressed. It's kind of like slapping a band-aid on a bullet wound because it's given you rules and restrictions and talked about nutrition and food, all of these like micro details that people tend to focus on when really in fact there's something that's underlying all of these issues, which is the emotional regulation for you. It might also be the relationship that you have with food. So it doesn't matter how many rules or how much you try to modify what you're eating, it's more so the why you're eating that matters, right?
Right. Right. Exactly. That, I mean, that, yes. Makes sense.
Hmm. So when you look at attempting low carb, right?
Mhm.
It sounds logical. You go online and people tell you go low carb and you're going to lose weight and we demonize carbs. And so I want to know your rationale behind going low carb.
I think when I was a kid, my mom told me that sugar is an addiction, just like tobacco is an addiction. And so when people talk about carbs, they talk about how it turns into sugar in your body. And so to me, that's evil.
Hmm.
You know, I think that's the,
Yeah. And so, sugar being an addiction is such a common myth that goes around online. And what is actually not explained when it comes to the sugar addiction myth is that it's not the sugar, the food itself that's addictive. It's the behavior, right? Because we do get a sense of well-being when we have sugar, when we have food, we get that boost of dopamine because food is something that is necessary for our survival. And so when we have that, we get that boost of dopamine. However, we get that exact same boost of dopamine from things like cuddling with your dog, listening to music, going for a walk, exercising, but you don't see anyone demonizing those things online, right?
right.
You don't see anyone telling you that you're addicted to listening to music, even though I'm sure you've experienced this before. You've listened to music and right away you're put in a better mood. Has that ever happened to you?
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So it's not the food itself, it's the behavior and the reward that we feel. And so what happens is I want to know for you, you've done all these different diets. When you've tried to cut out sugar or carbs or these certain foods, what tends to be your reaction in the long term?
Um, I think in the long term, I go from I can't eat it at all to I eat the whole box of donuts. That's I know that is. I don't think it. I know that's the reaction
Hmm. So what does that tell you?
that I'm not accept. I mean, it's just not working. It doesn't work.
Hmm. And why do you think that is?
Because my body's probably being deprived of something that it needs.
Hmm. Something that it needs. And also, if I were to tell you, don't think of a white elephant, what's the first thing that your mind goes to?
White elephant.
Right. And so when you start cutting down on certain foods, certain food groups, at the beginning, do you notice that like maybe the first couple of days or the first week feels like pretty good, you're able to do it, but over time you start thinking about that food more and more?
Yes.
Mhm. Yeah. And the way that I describe this in the academy is it's like a bow and arrow. So the more you pull that arrow back, every time you have a craving for that food. Let's take, for example, give me a food that you tend to overeat on.
Um, well, donuts, I remember I know it's donuts because when I was a kid, the lady at Jenny Craig, we talked about donuts. I mean, I remember this from when I was 15 years old, sitting in her office talking about donuts. So it's
Mhm.
always been that kind of a cakey, sweet type of
Okay, donuts. And isn't that interesting that the foods that you tend to demonize the most and the foods that you tend to avoid the most because you might have a lot of guilt, a lot of fear surrounding those foods are the ones that you can't control yourself around.
yeah, that's true. It
Hmm.
is very interesting.
Yeah. Why do you think that happens?
Hmm. I don't know. I don't know.
Hmm. So let's look at a scenario. I tell you, all right, Sarah, you're not allowed to eat donuts for the next month. And so I've just told you this one food that you really enjoy. Let's put it up on a pedestal and say you're not allowed to have it. And so maybe the first week you don't come in contact with donuts. So it's fine. You're not thinking about it. It's easy. But then you're at work and someone brings donuts. But in your mind, you've told yourself, God, I can't do it. I can't do it. Someone told me I can't have donuts. It's going to make me gain weight. It's going to make my blood sugar spike. So you start depriving yourself. And what that does is it going back to that bow and arrow, you pull that arrow back a little bit. And what that does is it creates tension, right? Because now you wanted the thing, but you couldn't have the thing. So you're seeing everyone else enjoying their donuts and you're there eating your apple, feeling sad because you want to be eating. So you do that once and you're using willpower at that point. Willpower is a finite resource, right? It's like in the morning, you unplug your phone's at 100%, your willpower's at 100%. By the end of the day, your phone, if you've used it enough, is going to be at 0%. You got to plug it back in. So willpower is this finite resource, and people in the diet culture industry like to make you think that just with enough willpower, you can curb your cravings once and for all. And that's actually not the case. If anything, relying on willpower will just make those cravings stronger because now you've seen the donuts, you wanted the donuts, but you couldn't have it. So you created tension. That's what that deprivation feeling happens. And then let's say a couple of days later, donuts are there again. And again, you told yourself you can't have it. How many times do you think that you can do that before your brain gets so fed up of feeling deprived, of not having this thing that you really want, of pulling that arrow back and creating so much tension where it's just a fight of don't eat it, you against the donut, you against food, you against sugar. And then it usually happens like on a bad day where you're either really stressed out or you want to celebrate, you got a job promotion, someone, it's a really good morning. Or, like we said, it could be a negative emotion. You're anxious, you're sad, you're lonely, and you say, screw it. I've been wanting this goddamn donut, so I'm going to have it. And then you have the donut, but your brain now has accumulated so much tension from all of the times you told yourself you couldn't have it, and you're eating it feeling so bad because you have this rule that you're not allowed to eat it, and now you're breaking this rule. All the guilt and the shame comes up, and so your brain doesn't say, okay, I'm going to have this one donut, I'm going to enjoy it, I'm going to listen to my body. When I'm done eating, when I'm full, I'm going to stop and I'm just going to go back to real life. No. A switch goes off in your brain that goes, okay, you screwed up, you broke your rule, so I'm just going to eat as much of these donuts, right? Like I've said no to like 20 donuts in the past month. So I'm going to eat them all in one sitting. And then because I have this rule that I'm not allowed to eat donuts, well, I've already broken it. So tomorrow I'll just go back to being a good girl and I'm just not going to eat them again. So if I'm going to go another month without eating them, well, might as well get as much in now because I'm going to want them again. Does that sound familiar?
Very. It sounds spot on.
Mm-hmm. Right. So that scenario, what do you think that you can learn from that?
As you were talking about it, and even when you said like eat, if you eat it and enjoy it and if I gave myself permission to say, okay, it's okay, I can have this donut. It's not like I eat them every day. I don't keep a lot of them in the house, but this is a special time, so I can go ahead and have it. Then I feel like I wouldn't crave it knowing, well, whenever I want one, I can have it. I just don't need to eat a ton of them all
Mm-hmm.
at once.
Right. Right. And what do you think is the reason why you haven't allowed yourself to have that permission to have the donut or to have the cookie or to have that food that you want, but normally you feel bad about?
Because I tell my body if I start, I can't stop. And if I and it's then it just is then I'm done. It just implodes. I'll never be able to get back on a diet again.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right. And isn't that so interesting that it's this belief that once I start, I can't stop. So I might as well just not eat it at all, or might as well avoid it at all costs. It's this belief. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's the belief that actually triggers you to overeat. Because if you cut it out, if you limit it, then eventually, no matter what, that food is going to come back into your life, right? It's going to be either there's always going to be something. Either it's going to be a summer barbecue, it's going to be a birthday, it's going to be a wedding. Like we live in a world where those foods are always going to be there. And there's only so much willpower you can exert until eventually you tell yourself, this is not worth all of the effort and the misery that I'm putting myself through by avoiding food. Because I don't know about you, but I'm a huge foodie. I love food, and it's one of the greatest pleasures in life. But it is really hard to fully enjoy life when you are constantly depriving yourself, or when you are eating that food, it's this internal battle. Instead of being able to listen to the signals that your body is sending you, the voice inside your head telling you that you have failed, that you're doing something wrong, that you shouldn't be eating that, are so much louder. How the hell are you ever going to listen to your body when that food police is so loud?
You can't, because I do feel guilt every time I even have a cookie. I
Mm-hmm.
just feel guilt about it.
Right. And then when you feel that guilt, are you fully able to enjoy that food?
No, you just kind of shove it in and think, oh, this is going to be great. And then I realize later, I don't know that I even tasted that.
Mm-hmm. So you shove it in, and you usually do it very quickly, right? Because you feel like that kid that gets caught in the store, so you're trying to like do it super quickly so that no one else sees it, right?
Yeah.
And then you haven't even enjoyed the food. So you've had this food that you told yourself you can't have, and then you feel bad about it. And then you tell yourself that you shouldn't have this food because chances are you probably overate. You didn't just have the one cookie, you had the two or the three or the four because you ate it really quickly. And then you tell yourself, I can't control myself around this food. So again, I shouldn't have it. And then it triggers that cycle over and over again, right?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. That's exactly what it sounds like.
Mm-hmm. So let's do a little midpoint check in. So far, what have you taken away from this conversation?
Um, well, I've taken away that I should not say they're bad foods. That's big,
Mm-hmm.
which is a definite shift in my thinking. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's a huge shift. And then I've taken away from this conversation that if you say that's off limits, then that's all you can think about. That's your brain just goes straight there every time you say that's off limits. And then you're in the cycle. It just perpetuates itself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's a good start. So there are no good and bad foods. And that is a hard mentality to break when this mindset started for you when you were 13, 14 years old. And the way that your brain works is think of like when we're young, when we're born, we are a blank slate. Like whatever we learn growing up from our parents or from society becomes our truth. And so we can't even fathom that there's another way of thinking because our brain is wired a certain way. And so you have been wired to think of a certain way, which is there's something wrong with my body. The only way for me to, number one, feel good, feel confident, feel happy, feel loved, feel worthy is to lose weight. And let me ask you, have you lost weight in the past?
Yes.
Okay. And how did you feel when you lost that weight?
Well, I felt like I had more energy. I know my blood pressure went down, and it made me feel successful.
Mm-hmm. Made you feel successful. It made you feel like you had more energy. And why did it make you feel successful?
because I felt in control. Like I
Okay.
felt like, oh, okay, I'm able to control this portion of my life.
Okay. You felt in control. And that's such an interesting thing because have you noticed? So you lost the weight. What happened
Mhm.
afterwards?
And I always thought to myself, I'm gonna, because at one point I lost 80 pounds. And I thought, I'm gonna just keep weighing myself consistently to make sure. But then as I gain 2 pounds, I'm like, oh, it's only 2 pounds. And then I gain a little bit more and I'm like, oh, I better get on it. And then I'm like, oh, I don't know. It just got too hard. It just got too hard. And then I just let it go. And my life has never gotten less stressful. So,
Yeah. It got too hard because, and I've been there. I remember I was putting in so much effort into saying no to foods, into missing out on life, trying to lose weight. And at a certain point, you have to realize that your life, your diet cannot be a full time project. We started the call by saying you have family, you're planning a wedding, you have lots going on, and your brain has a finite amount of space, right?
mhm.
And let's go take an example of this. This is a weird example, but it's a good way to help you understand the different functions that your body has. So you have to eat every day. You have to drink water every day. You have to pee every day. You have to sleep every day. Now, how much time, let's say out of 24 hours, do you spend worrying about food, about what you should be eating?
Outside of the 8 hours that I sleep, I think about it all the time. I mean, I always think, when is my next meal, or how do I prepare my next meal, or what am I going to eat at work tonight, or what do am I allowed to have a snack before bed? Should I eat breakfast? I feel like it's the rest of the time when I'm not sleeping.
Yeah. And what is that like for you?
It's horrible. I feel like I can put it aside for like half an hour when I'm in class, and then it's just a terrible feeling. Again, I have no control, and I
Yeah.
hate that.
So you have no control. Why do you think that you have no control?
Well, my mind immediately goes to, I have no willpower. But, you know, if willpower is not the main thing,
Hmm.
I don't know, maybe I'm scared to feel like I have control. Scared that I will feel deprived. I don't know.
Hmm.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. So let's go back to that example of all those bodily functions that your body has. Do you feel like you spend all day thinking about, okay, when should I pee? How much water have I drank? What are the intervals at which I should pee? Like, do you feel like that takes up a lot of time for you?
I mean, not a huge amount.
Right.
No, I mean, I would just, when I feel like I have to go, I go. You know,
There you
I don't
go.
plan it.
And why do you think it's so easy for you?
Well, because when you have to go to the bathroom, your body tells you.
Okay. There you go. So you trust your body to tell you what it needs when it comes to your bladder function.
Mhm.
How about for sleep? Do you have to follow some kind of regiment, some kind of plan on when to know when you should sleep or not? Or do you pretty much know from your body how it feels like to be tired and to go to bed?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Do you believe that you have the same capacity of listening to your body when it comes to food?
Well, I imagine we were created with that same capacity. Yes.
Hmm.
It's scary to think that, I don't know, but I imagine yes, we were created that way.
Hmm. Do you personally feel like your body is capable of communicating with you and that you could get to a place where you and your body are working in unison, in like on the same team, communicating with one another, instead of every day feeling like you're fighting against yourself?
I I would like to think that I could get to that point. Yes. I mean, that is an ideal place to be. Yes.
Right. And why do you think you're not able to do that right now?
I make excuses, I think. I you know, I'm just I I I don't know. It's just it's an obsession, you know?
Hmm. So I'm hearing, God, this coaching session could be hours because I'm hearing so many
I know.
things. No,
I know.
it's okay. Honestly, Sarah, this is what I love to do with my clients. So one thing that I'm noticing, so there's a couple of things going on here. Number one is your brain right now is wired to be your worst enemy. I've heard things like every time I've asked you a question, you've always made it about a personal character flaw. I make excuses. I have no willpower. I have no control. It's my obsession, right? And so imagine, do you have kids? You have a daughter, right?
Yes. Hmm.
Imagine if, or like even as a coach, like a soccer coach, you're telling your kids all day long how much they suck. Are they more likely to get better or to start believing that they actually do suck? So they start sucking at the sport they're trying to do because they think, oh, well, I suck at this. And so my behaviors are going to reflect that.
That's exactly what will happen. Yes.
So if you would never speak to your daughter or kids you're coaching that way, why are you speaking that way to yourself when you are the person who spends the most time with you?
It's a, another learned behavior. I mean, I was at the doctor not too long ago and they asked, "Do you feel like you're a failure?" And I'm like, "Yes. Every day. I fail every day. There's not that many things that I'm successful at. So I know it's just a an ingrained habit
Mm-hmm.
that I've always done.
Yeah.
Always."
And your brain, basically, what it does is your brain is like a Google search engine, right? And so whatever question you ask it, it's going to give you an answer to that question. So if every day you're asking self-defeating questions like, why can't I do this? Why am I such a failure? Why can't I just feel normal around food? Your brain is not going to go, no, no, Sarah, no, these are all the reasons that you're doing great. No, it's going to answer the very question you asked it. And so you're going to start seeing all of these reasons that you're failing in your life, all of these things that you're doing wrong. And then wherever you flash that flashlight, you bring more attention to it. And so all of these things that you're doing right, all of these things that would make you feel good and would push you in the forward momentum, that gets forgotten, it gets ignored. And so on a daily basis, what you end up feeling is overall negative emotions about yourself, about your life, about food. And so this goes back to not only are you lacking the emotional regulating systems to handle those negative emotions, but your primary emotions that you feel on a day to day basis are negative. And so when you constantly feel this negative emotion, and on top of that, you don't know how to handle them, what brings you joy?
Uh, Not myself, helping other people, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That's because I do try to be a positive person, but I am not ever positive about myself. I try to be the kind of person that people want to be around and that makes them happy, but it's not because I'm special.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's
Right. And so you have a negative view of yourself. Do you feel like there's also a lack of self esteem there?
oh yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I waited until I was in my 40s to go to college, is because, you know, I never thought I could do it before. And now I just have to do it because I'm in my 40s.
Yeah. And so let's say I give this example in the academy. Let's say you have two pairs of pants. You've got this one pair, which is ripped, dirty. You've had them for years and years. They're stained. And then you just bought this brand new pair of pants. They fit you perfectly. They're like designer jeans. They were very expensive. You love this new pair of pants. You kind of loathe those old pair of pants because they don't make you feel good. They don't make you feel sexy. Do you think that you're going to treat those two pairs of pants the same or differently? Like one, you might really make sure you wash by itself, right? You're going to fold it properly. It's going to have like a special part in your closet. The other one, you're not even going to fold. You wash it along with all these other clothes, right? You don't care if there's a hole in it. And so why would you want to take care of something that you genuinely do not like?
Well, you don't.
Right. And so if you don't believe that you're worthy of feeling good, you're worthy of developing these habits that would move your life into the direction of someone like you really want to become, if every day it's negative self-talk and it's self-deprecating comments, then why would you take the actions to start taking care of yourself?
Not for yourself. Maybe if you have an external reason, but not for yourself.
Mm-hmm. And that's another thing that we can talk about, which is extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation. When you're always focusing, and do you know the difference, intrinsic versus extrinsic?
Yes.
Okay. And so let's say we go back to weight loss, right? When people start trying to eat healthy or start trying to take care of their eating habits, a lot of the times the underlying intention, the goal is to lose weight. That's an extrinsic result, right? I'm going to eat healthy so that the number on the scale goes down. And so instead of focusing internally on, does this feel good or not? Is this sustainable or not? Does this feel good for my body? No, we just focus on, is this helping me lose weight? And so if we step on the scale one day and we haven't lost weight, then that piece, that main motivator for losing weight is gone. And so have you ever had this experience where you step on the scale and you've gained weight and you think, well, screw it. All these efforts that I've been doing to lose weight is for nothing. So might as well just eat all the foods because I'm not losing weight anyways.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's very defeating.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so when we learn to change your intentions behind food, right? And there's so many different pieces here. There's changing your relationship with food. There's helping you manage the emotional piece of it. But when the underlying goal for exercising, eating well, taking care of yourself is dependent on an external factor that you can't control, you can't decide one day that I'm going to have lost 15 pounds. You can, however, decide one day, I'm going to go for a 5-minute walk, or I'm going to try to increase my water intake. Those are the habits that you can control. And when you focus on those small habits, instead of this end goal that you really do not have control over, you put yourself back in the driver's seat, because it feels very powerless to try so hard to manipulate your body to make it shrink and to not see a difference, right? And then you feel like a failure because the one thing you're focusing on is not working. But if instead your focus was on health promoting behaviors, which is what we talk about in the academy, which is health promoting behaviors, you can control if you're going to get a good night's sleep. You can control if you're going to try to hit a certain amount of water that you drink a day. Then at the end of the day, you can actually look at that and say, my goal this week was to go for a 10-minute walk every morning. And I did that. And how do you think that that would affect your self-esteem?
Well, then you'd feel success. You'd feel like, oh, well, then this is something I can do.
Mm-hmm. And it changes your definition of success, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And when you're going after weight loss, what are you truly trying to achieve?
I think if you focus on weight loss and how your body looks in your subconscious, you're trying to achieve that other people feel better about you.
Right. And does it make you feel better about you?
Not always. I mean, it doesn't, maybe in my mind a little bit, but my body, it doesn't. No.
Right. So there are so many pieces here, so many layers, and it's so interesting because this happens all the time when I start coaching clients in the academy. They'll come to me with a question. And for you, your question was about your hard schedule working overnight. And then the more we dive into it, there's like so many things that open up and we realize what's really going on for you. So again, we'll do a little check-in so far. What have you realized? What have you learned about yourself that you really, and we're going to go more into like creating a plan for you, but that you want to take away from this conversation and start applying it to your life?
Well, I've learned that I need to change how I view why I want to eat better. That I can't be just dependent on I need to focus on me is what I do, which is really hard for me. But I need to make myself a priority because then probably I could be better for other people. But if I start with myself and I make small changes in my habits, like when I made the habit to floss every day,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and now I do it all the time. It's something I do without thinking about it. If I can make those habits, then I won't think about food all the time. These things will just come naturally.
Yeah, absolutely. And it starts so small, Sarah. Like what most people do is they'll notice that I don't feel good in my body. I want to get healthy. And then I'm sure that you've experienced this before. They make it like their full-time project. Like it's all they can think about. And they try to, okay, I'm going to cut down on carbs. I'm going to exercise 6 times a week. I'm going to sleep better. I'm going to increase my water. And we go from 0 to 100. But your identity, like your brain just can't keep up with all those changes because it needs to slowly become part of who you are. Because right now, what I'm hearing is that your identity is someone who has always struggled with food in her body. Does that sound about right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And as long as we don't address that core identity that you have for yourself, it doesn't matter how many diets you go on. It doesn't matter how many behaviors or habits you try to implement. Your brain is going to feel like it's faking it because you're not going to feel like it's who you are. And your brain is you're always going to act consistently with who you believe that you are. And so someone who sees themselves as a smoker is a lot more likely to continue smoking than to someone who sees themselves as a non-smoker, right?
Yeah.
And if I considered this was a big habit that I wanted to implement for myself is I wanted to start reading every day. I never considered myself a reader. I didn't take pride in the fact that I read every day. And so it was really hard for me to stay consistent with that habit because it felt like you almost feel like a fraud when you're doing something that doesn't align with your identity. And so instead of saying, I'm going to read every day, I said, I'm going to become a reader. And just that change in the way that I looked at myself, well, if I'm a reader, what does a reader do? They read consistently. And because of this small change, Now I have like a whole stack of books that I've read. And I really like, now it is an addiction for me to keep buying new books because it's now who I am. I'm someone who reads books. But as long as you give your brain that information that you are someone who struggles with food, you're someone who can't control yourself around food, then whenever you're going to be around that cookie, you're going to start eating, and then your brain is going to come on in and say, remember, Sarah, you can't control yourself around this food. And so your behavior is going to go right along with that identity that you have for yourself, and you're going to end up losing control around that food.
Mhm.
Make sense?
Absolutely. It's like a light just came on.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah. So there are many things that we can go about focusing on. But what I would first like to know is you mentioned at the beginning of our call that you are currently trying low carb. After the conversation that we've had, what do you think that continuing on this path of avoiding carbs and focusing on the food aspect, how do you think that that's going to end?
I'm sure it's going to end like everything else. It's going to end with me just craving carbs all the time and then giving up.
Absolutely. And that's the same cycle that you've been repeating your entire life, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And what are you afraid is going to happen if you don't break free from this cycle?
Well, I mean, being in the medical field, I've seen what happens when people are overweight and they don't ever control it because then it leads to bad health problems. So I just feel like it's eventually I'm just going to die young.
Okay. And obviously, I don't want that for you.
Well, I don't either.
Definitely not.
Energy and
yeah. So if you were to, let's say, think of the next week, 2 weeks, right? And I'll obviously guide you there. But if you were to think of one thing that you should start focusing on, what do you think that would be?
I was as you were visiting, talking to me. I feel like I should focus on stopping negative self-talk. You know, like because I'll be driving down the road and I'll hit a pothole and I'll just say, "Good grief, you're such a moron," to myself. And I think I need to stop saying that I'm an idiot to myself.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that would be a good place to start.
Yeah. A lot of it comes down to our sense of self-worth, right? That conversation that we have in our head. Because again, I want you to imagine, like you can give a name to that voice, a name to that voice that's basically your inner bully, right? You can give it a name of someone you really don't like. Like if you know someone called Janet and you really don't like Janet, that can be that inner bully for you. I want you to imagine like physically being with Janet all day long, right? Imagine how terrible you would feel being told how shit of a person you are every day. And then, of course, you're going to turn to food because it's that release. It's that sense of comfort. It's that thing that's going to bring you joy that even if temporarily, it's going to make you feel better. Right?
Right.
And so that's a really good place to start. And another thing I would like to know is if you were to look at your social media, your emails, the books that you have at home, how often do you see diet related things?
All the time. As I scroll through Instagram, it's that and zoos.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. So I want you to start by doing a cleanse. I want you, whenever something that is diet related comes up on your social media, unfollow, block, delete, unsubscribe, goodbye. Because how do those posts make you feel? Do they make you feel good or bad?
Bad because it's like I could never live up to it.
Right. And then on top of the bully, Janet, that's making you feel bad, you've also are scrolling on social media and then feeling even worse. Right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then there's this feeling of I'm not doing enough. I'm not being good enough. I'm not working out enough. I'm not eating well enough. And there's also the feeling of overwhelm of, okay, I should be eating this way and this way and this way. And your head is like exploding with information. It's overwhelmed. It doesn't know which direction to go. And then again, it's impossible to start listening and trusting to your body when your brain is so consumed with conflicting nutrition information. Yeah. So, number one is let's do a cleanse. All of those social media accounts that make you feel bad about yourself, that overwhelm you, that frustrate you, that confuse you, get rid of those.
Okay.
You want to start bringing in positive messaging into your life. So whether that's intuitive eating accounts, I know that you follow me on Instagram, so we're good there. Intuitive eating accounts, food freedom, self-care, mental health, positive psychology, like getting those things that are going to encourage you to cheer you up every day. And then another thing that I encourage you to do is you mentioned, I want to stop the negative self-talk. And that is something that is a lot easier said than done, because one thing I've noticed with my clients is that people live on autopilot. We don't actually bring attention or awareness to how many thoughts we have every day. Like if I were to ask you to write down every time you say a disparaging comment about yourself, you would probably have an entire page full, right? And so the first thing that I would like you to do is, I know you have a busy lifestyle. Do you have 2 minutes a day that you could dedicate to this?
Yes.
Okay. So 2 minutes a day, I want you to write down we'll start with three things that you appreciate about yourself. It could be the smallest things, because one thing that I've seen is people have a hard time coming up with this because they spent their entire life beating themselves up. So, three things. It could be I'm a good listener, I'm good at my job, or even I have been flossing every day, right? Like these, it doesn't matter what it is, because all you're doing is you're bringing, again, that flashlight away from everything you're doing wrong and towards those things that you can be proud of yourself. Because what you're telling your brain is, I want to see more of this. I'm bringing my attention to this. I want to see more of this. And so you're going to start noticing things that you're doing right, things that you're proud of yourself, that make you feel good more often. So 3 things you like about yourself. And then if you can, this could be in the morning or at night, but at night, what I really like to do, you don't have to write them down. You could do it before you go to bed, but 3 wins for the day. I was at work on time. I had a really great conversation with someone at the hospital, or I made an amazing meal for my family. Whatever it is, 3 wins that you had that day. If you were to stay consistent with that for 7 to 14 days, do you think that you would start feeling different?
I think I would.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do. I really think I would.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. And so that's a really good start. Of course, then we can start moving into how do we change the relationship that you have with food. That goes back to when you were 13. We can start talking about emotional regulation, emotional eating. But I'm not one to throw all this information at you at once. It's going to get overwhelming. And I want to start with small, doable steps for you. That's what we do in the Academy. It's small, doable steps so that you don't get overwhelmed. You know that you can do it. You feel accomplished when you do it. You feel consistent with it. You start seeing changes. Then you create the momentum, and then you can keep going. Make sense?
Yes, it does. Absolutely.
Amazing. So, as we wrap things up, do you have any questions that you would like to finish off on?
I don't know. I mean, what you have said makes so much sense to me. I'm already thinking ahead to how I can the accounts I'm going to unfollow, and then I was thinking about getting a little notebook that I could put in my scrub pocket and then write down things that I appreciate about myself. I can just take it with me wherever, and
Mhm.
that makes me very happy.
Thank you so much for being
Thank
on the
you.
podcast today.
Thank you.
I'm sure that anyone who has listened today can relate to your story, to your struggles. I hope they got from this conversation. So thank you so much for coming on Coaching Over Coffee or Coaching Over Tea today. We really appreciate you, and we appreciate all of you for listening. Again, if you want to apply for your very own Coaching Over Coffee session, you can head to the show notes where you will find the link. And also don't forget, if you haven't taken the Why Do I Overeat quiz and you are someone who struggles with overeating, emotional eating, binge eating, then this is going to help you uncover your triggers and give you actionable strategies to overcome them once and for all. That link is also in the show notes at sabrinamaya.com/quiz. So thank you so much. And this is your reminder that you are loved, you are worthy, you are awesome, and go ahead and have an amazing rest of your day. See you next week. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you found it valuable, I would love if you would share it with someone you know that could benefit. If you're loving the show, don't forget to subscribe over on Apple Podcasts so you don't miss a single episode. I really love hearing feedback from you, so please leave a rating and review over on Apple to help us get in the ears of more people who need it the most. Finally, come hang out with me on Instagram at Sabrina Magna Health for more educational content and get up close and personal with me. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you on the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you found it valuable, I would love if you would share it with someone you know that could benefit. If you're loving the show, don't forget to subscribe over on Apple Podcasts so you don't miss a single episode. I really love hearing feedback from you, so please leave a rating and review over on Apple to help us get in the ears of more people who need it the most. Finally, come hang out with me on Instagram at Sabrina Magna Health for more educational content and get up close and personal with me. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you on the next episode.